think you have to be a little tender towards your diabetes. I think while I may not love her, like I don't love her in the sense that I'm glad she's here every day, she's also just part of me. It's not who I am. But it's a part of me that when I pay attention to it, and when I listen, and when I get curious, and when I study it, it comes back to me 100-fold.
Welcome to the Reclaim Your Rise podcast. My name is Lauren Bongiorno, nationally board certified health coach and founder and CEO of Risely Health, where we help people and families impacted by type 1 diabetes take ownership over their lives so that they can transform with more freedom and confidence. Everyone has a different reason to be here. You might be seeking knowledge, support, or community, but at your core, I know that you long for something deeper. You're here for transformation. And that's what the Reclaim Your Rise podcast is all about. All right. We have Jen Costello in the house. Jen, I am so excited for this conversation. I know you are an extremely busy woman, so I am so grateful that you're here today with me.
Hi, LB. It's good to be here.
I just adore you. But I just was thinking about how this podcast was going to start and just like the flow of the questions. And I'm just like, I just love your energy and I can't wait to just give you the floor to just share your story, honestly.
I love having a chat with you. I love our chat. Like I'm just here to like girl out. We're here to just like have a moment. I'm into it.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So I want to open up with you sharing some moment recently where you reclaimed your rise. Is there anything that comes to mind?
I think what's really interesting about that question for me is that it's actually been really difficult over the last couple months to find a single moment, a single story, a single time, because I feel like I've been building and building on little win after little win, and I've loved that. But you and I were having a chat. I think last week we were just having a little talk about how things were going and how I was feeling as I'm sort of rounding out the last week of the DCB, and something really surprised me when you asked me how I felt, like how I was feeling. And for the first time, I'm coming up on sort of my 5-year diabetes diagnosis. And so I felt excited about diabetes, not in a like, oh, I'm so thrilled that I have this, but I feel excited to keep learning more about me, about what I can do, what I don't do, about how to treat myself the best way, about learning more about my body's patterns. And I think what's been really instrumental there has been, it's been the conversation about curiosity and openness and listening and knowing and trusting our bodies. And as I have gotten more in touch with that part of me around my diabetes, I'm interested. She's talking to me and I'm enjoying what she's saying and I want to hear more, which I don't know that I would have ever imagined saying, because for so long it's just been, it's been a drain. It's been a physical drain and an emotional drain. And it doesn't feel like that right now for the first time.
Oh, I love that. And, diabetes I say that on the podcast all the time. It's not a sexy topic. Like, it's not like, ooh, let's look at my Dexcom clarity today. I'm excited to open a bottle of wine and dive right in. Like, it's not by nature something that we want to get excited about. So I want to start back with you when you were diagnosed 5 years ago. I think 5 years is a really interesting time frame, and I don't know if we've had anybody on the podcast yet who's had it for that kind of period where you still in some ways may feel like it's a new diagnosis because you live so much of your life without diabetes, but at the same time, like you're nowhere near being a seasoned, diabetic by any means. So what was it like for you the first, let's say, like 4 years with diabetes? Like, how was your relationship to it in the beginning? What did that look like? And even more importantly, like what stage of your life were you at when you were diagnosed? Like what was going on in Jen's world?
Oh my gosh. I'm going to try to not use the colorful language that I use when we talk most frequently. I'm going to try to keep it clean here.
We don't have an explicit rating yet, so Jen, don't be the
first
okay.
But like Lauren, I was mad. I was mad when I was diagnosed. I was PO'd, pissed, find the biggest version of that. That's how I felt. So what was happening for me at that time? So I was 34. I was just beginning. So I work in a creative agency, so a marketing and branding agency. And I was just beginning to the point where I'd really moved out of even management into leadership of the agency, and leadership of a department. And so things were going honestly pretty well for me at work. And I was in a very busy season. One of the things that's part of our business is doing pitches. So you go out and you really pitch to try to get a big account or a big brand. We were out there pitching for a very large account. Like I'm talking five figures worth, which is kind of uncommon in my world. So it was a really big, high stress moment, a lot going on, a lot was riding on it. And about that time, like at the beginning of the pitch, it's sort of funny. I'd made the decision to go plant based, to just eat vegan, because I'm like, I want to feel good in my body. I want to feel quite clean. Like I really want to treat this like the machine that I needed to be, at work. And I was losing weight fast. Like I was losing, I think I lost, at the end of the day, I think I lost almost 30 pounds, and it was coming off quickly. And I'm like, go veganism, go plant based. Like this is what it's all about. This is how we get skinny, pretty, and smart. So I was enjoying that, but at the same time, I was not feeling good at all. I was walking around all day just bone tired. No matter how much I slept, no matter how much I ran, no matter how clean I was eating, I felt like my legs were full of sand. They were, it was just, I just wasn't feeling right. But I kept chalking this up to, this is an important moment in my career right now. Like I'm leading a pitch as leadership of the agency. I'm stressed because I'm aware of what the stakes are. That's what's going on. I'd had a couple dizzy periods, a couple dizzy spells at work. And I'm like, girl, you just need to have a little water, go to bed. Maybe you're just getting old. I'm 34. I'm like, you're just getting old. This is just what happens. We finally get to this final pitch, and we didn't get it, just PS. But we finally got to this final pitch meeting, and I stood up, and I'm pretty calm, usually under duress and while presenting. I stood up. My entire field of vision went black. I completely forgot what I was supposed, like, I choked. People like my boss and people that were there were like, no, you said things. I don't think you looked how you felt like you looked. But in my mind, like I said, I was dizzy. My field of vision went black. I forgot what I had to say. And I sat back down in that moment, and I texted my husband, and I'm like, I need to go see Dr. Ramji. I need to go see my doctor, because there's something going on here. Um, I think what's so interesting about that, though, is I explained every bit of it away. My body was just screaming at me to pay attention. She's like, look at me, listen to me, hear me, girl. Like you're a healthy, plant-based, running mini miles every week person. And I'm like, that's okay. I'm blacking out in the middle of a work presentation. I'm just getting old. Like this is the explanation I made. So anyway, I finally get diagnosed. I'm getting insulin, and my brain is clear for the first time in a really long time. And at first I felt so great. Like I felt such relief because I felt my personality come back. I felt my clarity of thought come back. I felt like I just felt a bit more like I did before. But that very quickly turned to what, I think is real grief, like real grief. I was mad. It's funny because I was cleaning out a bunch of documents here at the house not too long ago, and I found this PowerPoint presentation that I'd made for my first endocrinologist appointment. And all of my slot, like I'd collected all my data, everything I was eating, my weight, I'd done all this stuff. And every question I had was about, what could I do for this to not be true? Is there something that I can eat to turn this around? Because I didn't even understand at that moment the difference between type 2 and type 1. What can I eat to turn this around? How can I not be dependent on insulin? Because the very idea of being dependent on a medicine felt just suffocating to me. It felt suffocating. I just like, oh my gosh, I can't, I travel, I work, I have a life. I don't want to do this. I don't want this for me. So I was bargaining. Bargaining. And I remember my endocrinologist, she was like, interesting. She's like, skinny, losing weight, high A1C, and a type A woman. Interesting. She's like, you're going to really have a hard time with diabetes. And I was like, what? So that ended up being probably my emotional and mental state, if I'm being really honest, for the next 3 years, which is I moved out of being actively angry. Because I certainly went through periods where I was really afraid, really afraid. I was afraid of what it meant for me long term. I was afraid of what it meant for what I could and couldn't do. I was afraid for um, messing it up because perfectionism is a little streak that runs through my personality. And that was the very beginning. And after that, though, what ended up happening for me, because I have a desperate desire to always be independent, is I was really, I think rebellious is probably the only word I would use. I was resistant. I didn't want this to be true. So I was going to give my diabetes the bare minimum of attention. I wasn't going to be negligent. I wasn't going to not give myself insulin. I wasn't going to not carb count. But I certainly wasn't going to go above and beyond. I certainly wasn't going to be interested in reading about diabetes or being friends with other people that had type 1, because that's not me. I'd lived 34 years and had a personality and a career and an identity that had nothing to do with diabetes. And so I spent so much time trying to make it not be true. And when it was with my endocrinologist, I tried to make it not be true by asking her what I could do for probably the first 3 or 4 meetings I had with her, for this to not be my reality, for me to not be dependent on insulin. And the answer was just like, there is nothing. And so when I realized that wasn't a path, I started doing that in my personal life where, we had CDs that were like, yeah, eat whatever you want. And I'm like, I'm going to eat whatever I want. I'm going to eat whatever I want. I'm not going to learn about nutrition. I'm not going to learn about fat. I'm going to give myself insulin. And if my blood sugar goes high, that's just what happens because I'm not letting this control me. And the sad, not the sad thing, but I think the learning there is that diabetes took up more of my life because of that. It took up more energy and more space because of that active resistance rather than finally learning to like embrace it and live with it and listen to it. It's a really
Mm.
long ramble. This is what I do.
Wow, that was everything. And I'm so glad that you rambled. I It is so interesting to hear what was going on through your head and how you can identify now that what it was in that grieving process is that bargaining of like I'm not accepting this. Like I'm not accepting this because being a perfectionist, in so many other areas of your life that it's like if something isn't good enough, you're like, well, I'm not accepting that. Like I'm going to do better and I'm going to figure out a way around it and figure out how to make this an A plus, not just an A or an A minus. So there was a time that you and I have done a lot of work around where you had a very bad blood sugar incident happen when you were eating out. What, where in that, like, I could see your face right now and you're like, oh, I almost forgot about that. Like, it's like the whole cornerstone of literally like everything. But the infant the infamous mac and cheese incident. If I can't think of a title for this episode, that's what we're just going to call it. Is like it won't be great for SEO, but it'll just be the infamous mac and cheese moment and Jen. So what year did that happen with your diagnosis? Like where in the process did that happen? And were you in the same state that you just described where you were in this like I'm kind of accepting it but doing the bare minimum? Talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was probably, I hadn't even been diagnosed for a year when this happened. So this was maybe a couple months in. So my husband and we were preparing to go to a concert, which is a thing that we love to do. We're here in LA. We like to go see shows. So we're like, okay, right. We're going to go to the show. We're going to be normal. We're going to have fun, capital F. So we're going to go out to eat beforehand. And we were at a restaurant in a part of town that we were not really familiar with. And I'm like, I'm going to eat whatever I want. So I was like, right, mac and cheese. I love mac and cheese. This is great. Because there was a little bit of time right before this where I was like, okay, I'm mad about diabetes. Then I'm like, I'm going to restrict everything I eat. I'm going to not do carbs and see if that changes anything. That didn't change anything. So I'm here in this moment where I'm like, right, we're going to have cheesy carbs and it's going to be great. So, we ordered, it's such a moment. It's like, I ordered this food. So I ordered this mac and cheese, this restaurant, this busy restaurant that we've never been to. And I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be here. It's going to be here quickly. This food will be here soon. And it's going to be all good in the hood. So I'm like, all right, I've read online some people talking about pre-bolusing, injecting before your food comes. Maybe tonight's the night I'll try that, because this is a perfect moment to try it in a place we've never been, with a food I've never eaten, I haven't eaten in months, in a part of town I don't know. Great. This is good. What's the worst that can happen? So I think I got out like Figwe, and I looked at how many carbs it might be, and I think I gave myself somewhere between 8 and 10 units of insulin, just right there, before the food had even showed up at the table for mac and cheese. And it doesn't come. It doesn't come. And I'm getting nervous. And my blood sugar is falling, and it's falling fast. And I think I was at like 170 or 160 going into the meal. So a little bit high, but not super high. And at that time, I'm on the Freestyle Libre, which is a little bit, for me at least, I found it had a little bit of a lag versus the Dexcom, and didn't come. And I start to flip out. I start to really get panicked. I'm in a public space that I don't know. My husband's like, "You're fine." And I'm like, "I'm going to lose my mind right now, because no one's listening
Right.
to me. Nobody knows what's happening." And I'm like, "You need to go find somebody and get me orange juice right now." And it wasn't until probably the second time where I was like, I don't think that I actually grabbed him by the shirt, but I sort of like emotionally grabbed him by the shirt. And I'm like, "Go get me the juice. Go get it now." He's like, "Oh, this is serious. Got it." He got me juice. I mean, I think I probably drank 4 glasses of orange juice at this like very nice restaurant. And then I'm like, "I'm gonna die. This is it. This is how it goes down for me. Take me to the hospital." So like, I think he paid the check. We find a Cedar Sinai. We end up just sitting because at this time my blood sugar is finally beginning to come up. Um, and we're sitting in the hospital, or in the parking lot of the emergency room. And I feel like I've just run a marathon. I'm exhausted. I'm sweating. I've cried. My makeup is gone. It was just like, he's like, "So do you go to the show?" I'm like, I guess we just go to
He's
the
like,
concert. So
"So
we
can we go get our
what do you
money's
think
worth,
you want
or
to go?
like are we staying here all night?" Did you go to the show?
We did. We went to the
You
show. I
did.
sat there. I sat in my seat with my arms crossed the whole time, and I think I might have enjoyed myself a little bit at the very end. But I felt like I had a near death experience. I probably wasn't really ever near real danger, but I didn't know my diabetes or myself or what insulin did well enough to know what was about to happen. So
Mm,
that kicked off an entire period for me too, of just like, pre-bolus was terrifying. Pre-bolus meant bad things could happen. Pre-bolus meant that.
right. It actually showed you in that moment that, wow, if I'm in charge of deciding how much insulin I'm getting at every time I eat, and if I'm off and with the timing, with the amount, this is puts can put me in danger, and probably made that very real for you. And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of people, I mean, I want to say everybody with type 1 diabetes can relate to that, whether you're newly diagnosed or not. I mean, there were times when I've taken like pump breaks and went back on MDI and have accidentally given,
Mm,
15 units instead of long acting insulin, of fast acting insulin, after like, on first thing in the morning, when I'm like, I'm not going to have 100 carbs for breakfast, or 150 carbs, whatever it would be for me.
yeah.
And you're like, "Oh my gosh." And then the arrows are coming in. It's like, "Oh, here, we need the
I
juice. Give me
know.
all the, everything." So it puts things into perspective. I'm curious, and I don't know an answer to this. Is your husband then, is he on Dexcom Share after that experience?
Oh yes, absolutely. He's on. When
Okay.
I got on Dexcom, I put my mom and my husband on it. Mom was very quickly rejected from Dexcom Share, because every
Oh,
moment was a text. But yeah, my husband is. I travel a lot for work, and I travel a lot internationally, and so it actually feels a bit safe for me to know that there's somebody else that might be getting an alert if I'm going low, and he doesn't abuse it, which is good.
yeah. There's rules, there's boundaries, there's conversations.
There's
That's how it
boundary.
is
Yeah,
with
that's right.
yeah. That's how it is with Chris too. And actually, really funny story. So I was at a diabetes conference in Baltimore this past weekend, and Chris is on my Dexcom Share because about
Hmm.
3 years ago, I had an incident using inhalable
Hmm.
insulin similar to what you had, where I was like, I had no idea how powerful it was, and how, like, I did it after working out, so my lungs were more just like had just been working,
Yeah.
and that hit. I've never dropped faster, and that kind of freaked me out. So he went on it. But this weekend I was away at and in the hotel. We were, having dinner, drinks out, and I had like a 2:30 in the morning low, and I was like 50. And I woke up,
Mm,
treated it or whatnot. I think it was like 50 or 52. I woke up at, I treated it.
yeah.
And then in the morning time, I realized that Chris had texted me, and he had texted me like, hey babe, like, are you okay, like you're low. And I never answered because I sleep with my phone sometimes like on, I guess, like do not disturb or whatever, didn't go through. And then I woke up in the morning, I was like, I didn't answer you back. Like, what kind of like
Yeah.
secondary support are you if like you're supposed to call me? Then like there needs to be a backup like if you don't hear from me.
Yes. Now, Ben can tell Chris that if you don't respond, there is a nuclear option where you call the hotel, you find the room number, and you get patched through to the phone. Like you got to be persistent, my man. He knew
All
you
right,
had it handled.
Ben, if you're listening right now, you're gonna about to be on my Dexcom share. Chris, you're out. Ben, you're in. But I was laughing about it because I'm just like, I love that he texted me, but like the follow through is was the probably the most important part. But thank God I was okay, and I I've never had like a really really scary incident. But
Yeah.
anyways, I really am curious. Like now you're at
Mhm.
this stage, you have this low. Did that made you more kind of probably run higher? Is that right? Like more on the
Oh yeah.
higher side because you
Yeah.
were afraid of the lows. So
Yeah.
running more on the higher side, ironically enough, when I met you, 6 months ago or a little bit less,
Mm.
your A1C was a 6.9, which on
Yeah.
paper, it's like, great. Like, all right, she's a little afraid of lows, like, not too bad. But your time in range was 30%.
Yeah.
So, what happened between like year one and year like four, where with your numbers and how I
Yeah.
guess you know, tried to figure out and educate yourself on how much insulin to give and when to give it and all of that?
Mm. I think one of the ways that I've explained that what you just described, which is like on paper a pretty decent A1C, but only 30% time in range, is like I'm all over the shop. You know what I mean? I am up and down, like, and I'm still working on that variability. You and I were talking about this last week. I can't remember exactly what that number, that variability, that deviation number was when I first started on DCB, but I want to say it was in the 70s or 80s. Like I was bouncing around all over the place. Um, so when I think about what happened to me in between then, I mean, I started to invest in technology. When I was first diagnosed, I really didn't want anything on my body. I didn't want a pump. I didn't want a CGM. I went to the Freestyle Libre first because I thought it was the most low profile version of those things. I eventually was like, okay, I'm not taking the time to do the injections, to do the finger sticks. So I thought, okay, let me finally make it easier on myself. There's a real big difference between 34 and 36 or 37. I'm like, what are we gonna do? Let's just put something on our bodies. It's gonna be fine. So I think technology helped me a lot because it did help me respond quicker rather than not having access to that information because I'd have to do a finger stick. So that helped me. What's kind of funny is that I actually felt like um, I was a pretty compliant patient. I went to my endocrinologist appointments. I tried to carb count. I followed people like you on Instagram and Rob Howe. Like I certainly followed other type ones that were sharing information about how to be better. I think Lauren, I want to say, I think you were literally my very first follow after I came out and was diagnosed. Like I think you were the first. I don't know if you remember this, but when I had a call with you to do one-on-one coaching when I would like probably back in 2017 or 2018 when I was first diagnosed. I ended up not doing one-on-one coaching, partially because your girl was like, I'll figure this out. This won't be that hard. You know what I mean? And so
Wait, we
we
had
didn't
a
do the
call?
coaching, but I followed you for a long time after that.
I don't even remember that. I mean, I talk to a lot
I
of
can
people, but
imagine
I
you would.
usually
Yeah.
can remember. That's crazy. So you
Yeah.
said I can do this on my own. Like that was your outcome of what you said?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I was like, this is just gonna be mind over matter. This is gonna be logical. This is gonna be rational. I'm gonna do some reading. I'm gonna follow some people. And you know what? Just like in every other aspect of my life, if I apply myself well enough, I will make this thing my, I will crush this. I will own this diabetes thing, and it'll be a funny haha thing that just I happen to have, but it won't be a big deal.
Wow.
So
So,
that, yeah.
yeah. I'm like, just what do we do with that? That was
What do we do with that?
2017. That was
Yeah, I want to
2017.
say it was either 2017 or 2018.
Okay, so that was a while ago. Yeah. So
There we
you
go.
felt like, okay, I need help with this. Then you were like,
Yeah,
well, like maybe I just need to apply myself, like you said, more. Now, what happened
yeah.
in the application of yourself? Like, were you reading books, blogs, or just following, kind of trying to pick up tips and tricks? Were you, implementing them, or were you just learning?
If I'm being really honest with myself, I was probably consuming information more than I was applying it. But what I really focused on was honestly on the nutrition part of things. And that's where I started to get a relationship with like good foods and bad foods. Good foods were low carb, no sugar, and like a lot of really good things like whole fruits and vegetables, all that. But bad foods became brown rice, barley, certain kinds of fruits, bananas, like that. I started to create in my mind sort of this like sorting mechanism of what different foods were. And so what I was really focusing on was purely the food part of it, really the nutrition part of it. And a lot of what I told myself was like, I'm just not very good at carb counting. I'm just not very good at guessing how many carbs. I'm not very good at only, I'm eating more or eating less than I thought I would or that I bolused for. And so I was really attacking it at a purely like a linear, rational, numbers in, numbers out kind of way, and still ignoring my body, still ignoring the messages from my body, still ignoring how I felt, and ignoring a lot of the patterns that I might notice in myself, how I felt after I ate a certain food or didn't eat a certain food. But complete like I will own this if I just have enough information about how many carbs are in everything, and if I get that carb counting right, we will be fine. And that was clearly not the case. And like you said, not because my A1C wasn't terrible, because I was a roller coaster. I was up, I was down, I was correcting, I was low, then I was at 400, then I'm at 50. And that was a pretty common day for me, for my Dexcom chart to just look like a W all day.
Hmm. Well, if you think about it, and it is so important to realize, if you go into the bookstore, or you're on Amazon and you're looking through, like, if you type in diabetes, the first whatever 50 books that come up are like diet, 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 diet. Like,
Yeah,
okay, don't diet with diabetes, but eat this, don't eat that. Like, it's just all working, or they're all, the books are to support the food end of things. So of course, when you get diagnosed,
yeah,
like, that's what you think is the solution, is like, as soon as I figure out my quote unquote like foods I can eat and cannot eat, or like what diet's going to work for me, or how to count, carbs better, like that's going to solve the problem. And that's where we're misled.
yeah,
There are, of course,
yeah,
more books now that focus on more of the mindset and the psychology of diabetes, which
yeah.
we're, evolving in that sense, but we're still missing a huge subset of
Mm,
literature on the holistic model. This is, I'm going to listen back to this one day, hopefully, when I have a book maybe on that, because we need to create it. Somebody has to. But for you, like, when did you have that aha moment? Like, when was it like, all right, I've been
mm,
doing this for long enough. I can't sustain this anymore. Like, this is
yeah.
not the solution. I need to figure out a different way.
I can't think of anyone better to write this book than you. It's got to be you. It's got to be you. It's got to be you.
Oh.
Um, So for me, it was funny because I wasn't working, I wasn't focusing on my diabetes actually. I wasn't thinking about it, I wasn't working on it. But I'd gotten another promotion at work, and a big part of the thing I was working on with my executive coach was about being very candid in difficult situations. So really telling people, what needed to happen, and not sugarcoating or leaving any room for interpretation, really being candid. And so I was finding that through that exploration, I was actually excavating a lot of sort of personal stuff, things from my childhood, things from my upbringing, things that told me that I needed to be a certain way, a nice girl, a polite woman. And so I thought, you know what? I think I need a little bit more help to really, really get as candid as I need to be, as my job is telling me I need to be in this setting. And so, I went to a personal retreat called the Hoffman Institute, and it's basically it's they call it like 10 years of therapy in 1 week, and it's all about just really learning it's learning your emotional patterns, it's learning how you think and how that stops you from having the life you want. And so, I came out, it was a really important experience for me, and I came out of it with so much clarity about parts of my upbringing that I was still letting hold me back, that I was still allowing to have a hold on me, even though those were patterns that no longer served me. They didn't support me, they didn't make my life better. And I finally started to hone in on the diabetes component as part of that equation of things, of ways of thinking and patterns of thought that I had that were negative, that were just negative, and they weren't good for me because I still was mad. I was mad about diabetes still. I was upset about it. I was afraid still. I might show up and be a bit tough and type A and be like, yeah, I'll conquer you, I'll crush you. But at the end of the day, I was afraid. It's me freaking out in a restaurant, chugging orange juice when the mac and cheese didn't come. I was scared. I was scared of it. And so I was carrying that around. I was carrying that sort of dark stone around in my gut all day long. And I finally thought, I can see in my Dexcom, I can look at that W that was on my chart and say, I know how I was feeling then. I know when I'm in the middle of a double arrow fall from 300 to 50, I can't do what I need to do at work. I can't show up and be really candid or be really present for someone in my department. I can't help them solve a problem to my fullest extent. I'm not bringing my whole self to this party because in the back of my mind, diabetes is this dark, fearful area of resentment. And so I was like, okay, I got like this is probably for me the final frontier of really getting to a place where I'm letting go of old patterns. I'm letting go of those things that don't serve me. And it's funny because when I was away on this retreat, you give away all your technology. So you give them your phone and everything. So there's no access to the internet. And I'd gotten my phone back and I'd come home and I'd actually stayed off TikTok and Instagram and all that for probably a month or so after I got back. But I'm thinking these thoughts about my diabetes. And you were actually one of the first stories that had popped up on my Instagram feed when I finally opened the app. And I was like, God, okay, fine. Like, I was just sort of like, fine. Okay. All right. I know she talked, I know this, I know Lauren Bongiorno is into this space. And I'm just like, all right, universe, I hear you. I'm listening. I'm here for this. We're going to do it. And so I applied right away to DCB.
Okay, we need to take a pause. I've never shared this before, but like I literally have full body chills. So oh my God, I literally can get emotional about this. So you applied during while we were launching and talking about the program, obviously. So that means we were
Yeah.
in launch mode, right? Okay. So
Yeah.
before every launch starts, we usually go through
Yeah.
the Decide and Conquer Bootcamp because we have so many people who apply. We usually have
Mm,
5 to 6 week period where people can apply and then join the program. And before everyone starts, I do on the day of like this big meditation, this big like journaling
mm,
exercise. And one of the things that I literally like write down and I say over and over again is like, um, I don't chase, I attract. Like who's meant to find me and find this program will. Like it's a mantra that I always come back to because that's how I want to show up is like not to
yeah.
feel like people have to do this program or they like have to come through the DCB to transform their life. There's, just finding something. But if somebody happens to find me and like we call them in through talking about the DCB and sharing people's stories, then like that's what's meant to be. So we had
Mm,
this probably weird, like energetic connection thing going
I
on
love
where
that.
you were just at this, retreat focused on
Mhm.
yourself and self-development and probably like yeah tuned into what's my next step, and then you come back, turn Instagram on, and I'm over here being like whoever's meant to come through this program is going to find us and is
100%.
going to change their life, and it just happened. Wow.
I love that. I think it's I mean, the idea of attraction rather than promotion, I think is such a powerful and, I say this as someone who works in marketing and branding. I think attraction is so powerful, and I certainly feel that in the work that you and all of your coaches do, because it's also not a single way. It's not a single program. It's asking us to tune into ourselves and to to the knowing, to the patterns, whatever your version of that is. And so I love that. I know you've been this like weird, like this sort of ever present force, if you will, in much of my diabetes life. And then it's like when we were like, all right, we're going to talk, I was like, oh, wow, we're going to talk.
You're like, we're gonna talk and we're gonna do it.
We're
But
going to talk.
the fact that we talked previously showed that
Mhm.
like you weren't open and you weren't ready at that time
I wasn't
because
ready. Yeah.
you weren't ready. Because I want you to think about and I want you to talk about now, like
Yeah.
how the program has like completely changed your relationship with diabetes
Yeah.
numbers and beyond that. Like that change, anybody would say, and you'd probably say, like, yeah, magic wand. I wish I had that in 2017. But if I went through the program then, maybe I wouldn't have been so open to learn and to
Yeah.
change and to think the way that I am now because I'm on the other side of this like personal development transformation. And then this was the final step.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you said is very true. I wasn't ready in 2017 or 2018. I was still in the very beginning stages of grief and bargaining and anger and all of that. I think this would have been completely wasted on me. But once I had gone through a process where I had really honed my ability to listen to myself and to trust myself, it made me realize how much I wanted that in my diabetes. Like I'd learned to trust myself when it came to um, my thoughts, my feelings, my perspective on my life, what I needed, what I needed to say at work. I'd gotten there, and I wanted that so bad in diabetes in a way that I felt like I was outsourcing. I was so busy outsourcing what was right for diabetes to other people, to influencers, to endocrinologists, to CDs. I was like, what do I do? Tell me what to do, and I'll do it. I will be compliant. But I wasn't owning it. It wasn't part of me. I treated it like an external thing to be managed, rather than a part of me to listen to and to be curious and to be kind of tender towards, if I'm being honest. Hopefully, this might be a little bit mushy for people, but um, I think you have to be a little tender towards your diabetes. I think while I may not love her, like I don't love her in the sense that I'm glad she's here every day, she's also just part of me. It's not who I am, but it's a part of me that when I pay attention to it and when I listen and when I get curious and when I study it, it comes back to me 100-fold. And I think that to me has been the most magical part of the DCB and working with you and with the coaches. And of course, this is all supplemented by a killer foundation of education, and in particular, the education that we often don't get from the internet, from our doctors, learning about what parts of nutrition to really pay attention to, learning to about hormones and cycles and everything like that. But at the end of the day, anybody can learn anything, but I think the most significant thing that you all teach is that listening, and is that tapping into that inner knowing. And for me, that transformation has been from anger, resistance, resentment, this was an uninvited guest in my life that was going to ruin it, to something that I feel, like I said, I feel feelings for. I feel tender is the only word I keep coming up with, that word, because it's how I treat it. It's deserving of me putting my arms around it and thinking about what it needs and what it wants. Because when I do that, like when I nourish that part of myself, I nourish me, I nourish all of me. And that has just, I mean, that to me is a revelation. Like that has been the revolutionary part of this.
Very much what I'm hearing you say too, and to connect it back to the beginning when you were saying that
Yeah.
how you approached diabetes in the beginning was very linear. It was very, tell me what to do, I'll do it,
Do it.
perfectionist, just I will follow the lines. That doesn't work with diabetes, and you have to surrender to more of that less masculine, more feminine energy of yeah, just kind of it's surrendering to what it really
Yes.
takes, which is grace and compassion and,
Mm,
slowing down and accepting and love being yourself with diabetes.
mhm.
So that's all the, quantifiable, and we have to talk
Yeah.
about like the quantify the quantifiable, the what am I missing? Qualify the numbers, the
Quantified?
hard numbers. Quantified.
Yeah, yeah.
More of the hard numbers.
The quantitative data.
There we go. Quantitative was what I was reaching for. I love that we switched accents midway through the program and midway through the
Aw,
podcast.
yeah,
But yeah, you came in with 30% time in range, and I want to read you back. So these were the three
yeah,
goals that you set when you came into the program. So you wanted
yeah.
to double your time in range from 30% to 60%. You wanted to trust your instincts and what your body is telling you, approaching with more curiosity and confidence and
Mm,
less judgment and fear. And third, you wanted to feel more integrated and complete around your diabetes and less resistance and more acceptance. So number two and
yeah,
number three, like you just spoke about, you check that off. But double
mm.
your time and range goal. So when you said 30 to 60%, like did you actually think that you could do it? Did you think that that was like a reach, a stretch? Like when you set that goal?
No, it's in my mind that was a snowball's chance in hell moment. Like there was no way that I would ever get to 60% because that would be more time in range than out of range. And that simply I just couldn't imagine a world where that was the truth. It's funny because I love the word surrender. Which I think I think can sound a bit soft, maybe weak. You know, you're giving up, and I think surrender has been such a powerful thing to change the numbers game for me because I think I was just, we were also talking about how like, oh yeah, no, it's not sexy to look at your Dexcom. Like I like to open my Clarity every couple days, and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? I mean,
I
because
see
it's
you. I
true.
mean,
Because I'm into it.
do it right now because I mean, listen, I did it. We looked over it last week, but like you're above 60% time in range, and we're not even done with the program yet. We still have, a little ways to go.
My last
So
2
where are you
days
at?
is 76% time in range. My last 7 days is 70%, 76% time in range. The last 14 and 30 are 68 and 69.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Like doesn't just show it's a one off, like it's consistently you're showing up in that way because of the changes that you've made.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I love every bit of it because it is while it's not is perfect because it's not 100% Lauren. And the another version of me would have so much judgment about that, you know, because even when I was at 30, I was just like judgy, wudgy little bear. And it was like, it was so bad. I was like, I just got a case of the like whatevers. You know what I mean? It's like, well, it's 30%. So that's nowhere near good. So we're just not going to, whatever. We're just not going to worry about it. I love that 68%, 69%, 72% because it represents 72% of time where I'm like, I don't know, I'm feeling integrated and complete around my diabetes. And even the time where I'm above and below that, I'm not, I'm not mad about it. I'm not angry about it. I'm learning from it and I'm listening to it. And I'm going, okay, well, this new situation came up that I hadn't had to deal with since we were in DCB. What an amazing chance, stimulus to try something new and to learn from it.
Mm. And that's that excitement that you said of how you've reclaimed your rise is getting excited about it.
Yeah.
And I can see it. I can see it coming through, and you're looking forward with what else can I do and what else can I accomplish, but also at the same time
Yeah.
being happy and content with all the progress that you have made. So
Yeah.
I would love to wrap up this podcast with one final question. And I think this is, a
Okay.
little bit unrelated to anything that we've talked about, but
Yeah.
like a super important story. So you told me on our last session that you were, and this is a story about advocating for yourself and the importance of that with the
Yeah.
medical system. So you told me a story about you having this rash on your on your ears and at certain parts of like your face for
Mhm.
a while now. And you came to the session last week and I was like, what's new and good with you? Like, what's going on? And you opened with the excitement about this. You were literally glowing. And I was like, okay, how is this going to, I'm like, great. Love celebrating her for this like achievement with her, skincare, but like, how is this going to connect back to your diabetes? And so it eventually came full circle. And you talking about like, no, like advocating for my diabetes, like taught me to advocate in this area. So can you
Yeah.
share the story about, not the mac and cheese, but the skincare,
Yeah. The skincare. I mean,
the
it's all
infamous
connected,
skincare.
Lauren. Skincare, nutrition, it's all here.
Yep.
So, yeah, you're exactly right. So, for the last couple of years, I had experienced, kind of red, irritated skin, mostly around my eyes and a little bit in my ears. And I had just been ignoring it because that's what I do here. When something is clearly not right, I will just ignore it or I will explain it away. And so, I've been living like this for, I don't know, 3, 4 years. And it's progressively getting worse and having different flare ups. And the beautiful thing about taking care of my diabetes and learning to advocate for myself is that it's created time and space that I didn't know that I had. So like I've made a number of improvements in my general like health and wellness life, emotionally and physically. And I looked at myself in the mirror the other day. I'm like, okay, what are we doing? Why are we living like this? We know this isn't normal. I know this isn't correct. And so finally made an appointment with a different kind of dermatologist. Went in ready to like just clear and not I think the difference sometimes in advocating for yourself that for me was a real switch. Sometimes I've gone into endocrinologists and been really, I mean, I might even use the word aggressive, really like, all right, like I'm going to tell you everything that's going on and I'm going to be really assertive about it. And this was like this advocacy had a different energy for me because I went in knowing what was wrong, being very clear about what I was experiencing and what I hoped to have happen, and was also really open to what she was going to tell me. And that was different. That was a different kind of advocacy because it wasn't about, um, I don't even know what I would say it used to be about in the past, but like I said, it would be so dominant, almost to the point where I didn't leave room to have the conversation or to question or to challenge or to provoke my doctor to give me more information or different kind of information or to work with me in a different way. And so when I went into this dermatologist, I had this different energy where I was clear and I was candid, but I also was open to her and what she was going to tell me. And so anyway, at the end of the day, what I found out was is something called seborrheic dermatitis. It's another autoimmune thing where my body is like, we have another enemy. This time it's at the top of our eyelid, so we're going to attack that. And she diagnosed it, gave me some medicine, and so that was on a Friday afternoon. And I think you and I had a call on a Tuesday or something. My skin was already so much clearer, and I felt really good about myself because I had showed up in that way. I'd shown up in a way that I didn't know was possible for me before because it was either about being a bit passive and waiting for the doctor to tell me what to do, or it was really domineering and aggressive and I'm going to come in and be be really loud. It was a really authentic version for me that was about being clear and candid, but letting her tell me what I needed to know. And but everything from that interaction to the result of like, I mean, the skin is it right now. So like, I'm feeling, she's looking good, feeling good. I know, I'm into it. So uh,
Listen,
that's a
you
lesson I
need to
learned
jump
in
on.
DCB.
Yeah. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm like, you
Right.
need to first jump on TikTok and make a video. It's gonna go viral of like all these, you're like, my skin is glowed because you are like a poster child for literally like skincare right now and like figuring out the root. But it's interesting because yeah, those are the things you learned in the DCB because at Risely we have more so internally than even like externally. We don't talk about it as much, but we have 7 points that are our community
Mm,
manifesto. And these are things that
mm,
us on our coaching team, like we live by and what we encourage the community to live
mm,
by. But the interesting thing is, the way you do one thing in life, I'm a true believer, is like how you do everything in life. And one of the community manifesto points is get curious about what your outcomes can be, not what they are. And so you went into
mm,
that doctor's appointment with like, hey, like I don't want to accept this and I'm really curious like what would it take in order to create a change with something that I'm unhappy with right now, or make it a little bit better? And because you were open to that and living through that, like that's, you found that solution. So I'm so happy for you, and you're glowing.
I feel like I feel like a happy girl. I really do feel like I've got kind of a different new lease on life, and not one of those short-term versions that'll go away like a good vacation tan, but these feel like big seismic internal moves, and they're muscles. And the more I exercise them, the stronger they feel and the better I feel as a result. So I'm glad you can see it on the outside, because I certainly feel it on the inside.
Heck yes. Okay. Well, Jen, I would love you to leave with one piece of advice that you have for somebody living with type 1 diabetes who is extremely just like busy. They're just like a boss in one area of their
Yeah.
life, whether it's, as a parent or as a caregiver, or in their work and career, and they're struggling to see how like making more time for diabetes can create a different life for themselves. Like, what would your going through that, what would your piece of advice for them be?
I would say to know that you are an expert in yourself as much as those external experts are in their fields. And what I mean by that is, when we listen to ourselves, like really tune in to the message from our body and make space for that, it is an amazing giving mechanism that's going to return so much information. And the more that we can sort of, instead of outsourcing care for ourselves, insource it, like knowing that we've got more answers than we think we do. I think that's been huge. And if I get really practical, just pre-bolus. Give your insulin 10 minutes to get there before your food does. Just know, but read the context, read the signs, really, really make sure that you're doing it the right way. But the most practical tip, honestly, that has made one of the most significant differences in my time and range has been pre-bolusing, but doing it the right way. Not at a busy restaurant with the food I've never eaten or haven't eaten in months.
And giving 8 to 10 units before you don't know when the food is coming out.
What made you think I was going to eat 120 carbs worth of mac and cheese?
Listen, some of those apps are just, like not, and plus, well, we talk about this. This is for another episode, but taking into account the fat and the this and the that, and
Yeah, that's
how
right.
your insulin absorption at the time. So many different factors. I would love for you to go back to that restaurant, bolus for that mac and cheese, have it, and then be like, I'm reclaiming my mac and cheese infamous story. That's
That's
my
the
life homework
TikTok.
for you. That's the
Forget the
TikTok.
skincare. That's the TikTok.
I like that. I like that better. All right. So everybody tune in to see Jen do that and conquer and reclaim her rise with her mac and cheese. Jen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you. Do you want to plug your creative agency just in case anybody out there is listening?
Sure. So I am the chief strategy officer at a creative agency in Los Angeles called TBWA Shy at Day. So if you want the treatment that Apple or Gatorade or Airbnb have gotten, feel free to give us a shout, or don't. We can also just keep talking about mac and cheese.
Oh, Jen, thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you so much for being here with me today and listening to this episode of Reclaim Your Rise. To let us know that the episodes we're putting out are impactful, and to help us get our street cred up and let everyone else know that this is something worthy of their time to listen to, please leave a rating and review on our Apple podcast, send the show to other people impacted by T1D or maybe even your doctor, and share it on social media tagging at Risley Health and at Lauren_Bongiorno. New episodes of Reclaim Your Rise come out every single Tuesday, so make sure you are subscribed to the podcast so that you never miss a beat. Thanks again for listening, and as always, remember, diabetes is a challenge that we did not choose, but one that we can rise above.